the only one that has Georgia and South Carolina. We unfortunately are number 3 in the United States for new cases of HIV transmission, so I hope they'll listen to this little guy as I'm trying to advocate. So I think what needs to happen a whole lot more in rooms like this and elsewhere is the whole mix of the community just having really good long discussions rather than it's good that I get to speak to you and such, but I'd love to be in other sessions, other times, where we just get to sit down. I was in one recently in South Carolina. I think we had about 15 transgender ladies there. I unfortunately don't know near as many transgender men, but I know we have a good group out tonight that came that supported me at the Transgender Health Conference. But the idea being is that we sat down for like an hour and we talked about what's going on the streets, what's going on in any of the sex work that anybody's doing. They give me a lot of insights because my mentors and a lot of the stuff I share is each person in each community that represents you rather than me trying to make stuff up and look and sound good. I'd rather steal your words because there's a quote I love. I never had an original idea in my life, but I'm a darn good copier. Right, so that's what I'm trying to do, to put it back out to you all in the sense of trying to speak in terms of what you might have going on in the different communities and hopefully have some credibility. But lots more going on at Gilead. So Greg Alton was really impressed with what he saw at U.S. Conference on AIDS. So if you don't know this already, Diana Oliva, if I'm saying that right, I hope, because I'm just getting to know her because she's newer on the team. She's actually been promoted to public affairs at Gilead. So who in the room knew Darwin Thompson, right? We love Darwin, right? And Mason, right? So Darwin got to go up there and probably even more represent gay and bisexual black males and same-gender loving or heterosexual black males that sometimes might have sex with men on the side, because we know all those groups are different and not we can't pigeonhole anybody, right? But now there's representation at corporate with the transgender female being Diana at a very high level to even kind of influence our policy across the country. So you've got somebody right in there at Gilead. The only other person in that department with them, and I'm trying to pay attention in the corner, but I can't see you. Hey, Derek. But the cool thing is, who knows the name Douglas Brooks? So you should. I'm not throwing shade, but you should know the name Douglas Brooks, right? Douglas Brooks was the first openly gay black man ever to be an advisor to a president for HIV policy. He worked with Obama. Once he left the Obama administration, Douglas Brooks came straight to Gilead. That's Diana's teammate now. So it's Douglas Brooks, it's Darwin, and Diana. They're the main 3 people, other than maybe a host of a couple others at Gilead, helping to impact policy and come into our communities and kind of say what are the needs of the community. So my guess is there will probably have future listening sessions and visitations at the agencies and the organizations that are focusing on certain areas that we think we can help in and make more difference. So I hope that's exciting for you, right? Because you all know this, or maybe as a reminder, or if you haven't heard me speak before, perhaps, a lot of our staff is part of the LGBTQIA community, right? Our corporate is right outside of San Francisco in Foster City, not too far from Ground Zero. A lot of our staff is living with HIV, right? There's no cure that's hiding. We're trying to make our best medicines and that kind of thing. But there's a lot of cool, exciting stuff going on. You got a staff at Gilead that is really bought in, and that's why my rare job exists. Most drug companies, as you know, don't have positions like this out there. I'm just trying to think of what else Diana shared with me, but I think that's some of, I have high hopes in the background, but I think you're going to see this be the start of the year for the community and making even more of a difference from the Gilead standpoint, right? So there's a few slides I asked them to pull up just for education's sake, and I'm still good on time. I'm watching it. She's looking at me closely. But I always got to do a little education, so we'll skip vaccinations because that'll be in the background. We don't have any vaccinations or cures for HIV, but we know about PrEP, right? Who's heard about PrEP? I'm sure most everybody in this room. Who can tell me what PrEP stands for? Pre-exposure, prophylaxis, and if you don't like that word and you want to keep it simple for people, prevention. PrEP is not a pill. It's never been just a pill, right? PrEP is a whole strategy to prevent HIV transmission. By the way, we make the pill. However, it's safer sex practices, it's condom use, it's counseling, it's collaboration with agencies, it's everything an individual needs with whatever their environment or circumstances is to prevent HIV transmission. It can be different for every person, right? Then there's PEP, right? What is PEP? Post-exposure prophylaxis. So how do you prevent HIV transmission after exposure? That just sounds crazy. So why is it post-exposure? That sounds like, how the heck do you do that? So how quick do you have to start prep? 72 hours. How long do you take it? 30 days straight, right? Now, all of you all seem to know this, or a whole lot of you. I sure hope it's leaving this room and going out there and hitting the streets and the communities and the churches and your friends and your family and anybody you cross paths with that you haven't even met yet to make a difference, right? But here's the trick one, and then I'll wrap this up, right? But what is TASP? T-A-S-P. Treatment as prevention. I heard a lot less voices on that one, but I saw some hands go up. All that really means is treatment as prevention. When you're practicing that, it gives anybody living with HIV the same stake in the game to make a difference with others, to love and hope for them, right? Because if you're doing PrEP or PEP, the idea is you love yourself and others. You're going to get down, maybe not even get HIV. You're going to help keep down the community viral load. If you're practicing treatment as prevention, you're doing your best to get to what we call the Holy Grail, undetectable, or as close as you can get to it, right? And that means, like Magic Johnson, who's not cured, you're way healthier, you have way less chance to transmit the virus, and you can be on the, right? He's like, yeah, I got to remind you he's not cured, even though he has a whole lot more money than us. And the other idea is that he can be on the newer medicines as they come out, because that's now written in to the new medicines that you need to be undetectable for 3 to 6 months on your current therapy. But those are the 3 legs of the prevention stool to make a difference in the community. And I'll just wrap it up with this. A course for any community, and the transgender community as well. We got to help agencies and organizations and staff and anybody dealing with you on any level so that you're comfortable, because we know, and I didn't want to bring you down, we know the backgrounds of trauma, we know the backgrounds of incarceration, we know the backgrounds of depression, we know all the things that probably you all are picked on more than anybody else out there, right? But the idea being is that we got to get the providers to be more sex positive, to be more open-minded, and to really focus on harm reduction, right? And Diana Oliva, she gave me a great example. She said, what if I'm doing sex work? And she said, say for example, as anybody in the community who might be doing that, or other communities, because if I lose a job, I might be doing it too. I don't know if anybody would hire me, but it's all good. But the idea is, what if I have 5 Johns at the hotel that all want to be with me? How is somebody on staff comfortable with that discussion to have harm reduction without judgment come into play, right? And all that kind of stuff has to happen. So I'm going to wrap it up. I love you all. If you want to, give me hugs before I leave and go home, because I'm getting back to the family. But have an awesome event tonight. And guess what? The self-pay bar is open, I believe. So that's good, right? All right, cool.
That was good, right? Okay, so next we'll have Royce and his band come up. And then y'all are free to go get drinks and food.
How's everybody doing tonight?
Awesome.
Y'all doing good?
Yeah.
Give yourselves a round of applause for coming out tonight. So my name is Royce Hall, and I'm a part of the conversation. And first I want to say thank you to Fulton County Board of Health for thinking of us and whoever initiated this entire conversation. Thank you very much. Let's see, I'm going to do some music tonight. Is that cool with y'all? That's cool? Alright, so on keys I have my man Adri, and on drums I got Coley. And we're going to give y'all some funk, some neo-soul, some hip-hop. So, you know, get into a vibe. Can we do something real quick? I need some crowd participation. So this is what we're going to do. Can y'all follow instructions?
No.
Cool, alright, so I'm going to say this and y'all going to say it back. We got that good energy. We vibrate on a high frequency. It transfers from you to me. We gon' let it fill up this space. Y'all try it. Yeah. We got that good energy. We vibrate on a high frequency. It transfers from you to me. We gon' let it fill up this space. One time. Yeah. We got that good energy. We vibrate on a high frequency. It transfers from you to me. We gon' let it fill up this space. Yeah. We got that good energy. We vibrate on a high frequency. It transfers from you to me. We gon' let it fill up this space. Y'all wanna try? Real quick. Get y'all loosened up a little bit. Y'all try. Yeah, we got that. We vibrate on a. It transfers from. We gon' let it fill up this. One more time. We got that good energy. We vibrate on a high frequency. It transfers from you to me. We gon' let it fill up this space. Alright, so we'll let y'all loosen up as you know how to it. Let's go. Enjoy your food and your drinks. It sis, and I'm sick of being shy. Yo, I just wanna make you mine. It's so beautiful, so exclusive, so fabulous, it's so ill with it. It makes no sense. And I'm sick of being shy. Yo, I just wanna make you mine. I said 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 I just wanna make you mine. Yeah. Are y'all still okay? Y'all alright? Alright, cool. So gonna keep it moving. The next song is called Blue in June. And how many of y'all ever been in love? Maybe. How many of y'all ever had a crush? A crush. Alright, cool. So this song is all about having a crush. And it's real churchy, so you can clap to it, you can stomp to it. You know, you go to church, you go to church, you go to church, anybody go to church? Yeah. y'all ever felt like that? You been in love before? You got a crush, niggas got you confused. You don't know what to do, left from right, up from down, you just shaky and weak. Alright, so we come on to the last one. How many of y'all love Jill Scott? How many of y'all love Jill Scott? Alright, cool.
How's everybody doing? Cool. My name is Derek Wilson. I'm the Director of Sexual Health Promotion for the Fulton County Board of Health. Y'all look good tonight. Give yourselves a hand. Someone said a little bit earlier that they wanted to thank, whoever it was that kind of came up with this idea to do this video. And as much as I would love for myself or for the Board of Health to take credit for it, that would not be true. Please stand up. Here is the person whose idea this was. I met with Taj and Janelle and a few others about this a while ago. We've been talking about this for a while. Janelle, Taj, and a few others that really kind of talk all of this stuff through. And the reason that we really wanted to do this video is one very simple reason. I've been in HIV for a very long time. I've been working professionally as a tester, as a manager of programs on the government side. And whenever we talk about transgenders, persons, and HIV, we only ever talk about transgender women and HIV as if trans men have no risk factors whatsoever for HIV, that they have no sexual health needs whatsoever. And the reality is that we really do need to consider the fact that trans men also have risks for HIV. They also have sexual health needs. Many trans men are gay men themselves. And so at the end of the day, we really want to make sure that we are, as we have our trans coordinator, Justine, give Justine a hand. Isn't she doing a good job? And we really want to make sure that as we are providing services to the entire community, to the entire Fulton County community, the entire Atlanta area, we want to make sure that we are inclusive of not just trans women. And trans women have some significant HIV prevention needs, but let's also not forget that trans men also have some significant sexual health needs. We want to make sure that we're responsive to the sexual health needs of trans men. Amen? Amen. All righty then. So, really quick. I have a couple of giveaways. I have these hoodies.
I wear large.
I have some hoodies. And I'm going to be real honest. If you were medium, we're going to have to owe you a hoodie. If you were a large, well, you're an extra large probably. But if you're, Ed said no shade. I didn't say that. I understand that with us, shade is a part of the process. So we have some extra larges, some double XLs, we have some larges, we have a couple of smalls. To the people who can answer a couple of questions. Ready for some questions? All right, it'll be the first person who, and Justine, y'all come on here so you can see who like answers quickest. All right, so Justine is the judge for who got their hand up the first, and then you have to answer correctly.
He just answered the question.
Some people. All right, so, first question. What is the name of the transgender male actor on Queen Sugar who played a police officer? You gotta give his real name. You already got a hoodie. Why are you answering questions? Who? Anybody know? Wait, right here.
Michael Bryant.
Close enough. Brian Michael Smith. Oh, what size hoodie do you wear?
A 2X.
As I said, it's a part of the process. All right, next question. What is the name of the first openly trans male professional boxer? Wait, I saw him back there. Patricio Manuel, I'll take it, correct. I told you get one. All right, last question, then we're going to move on to the video. Name a vaudeville comedian who despite dressing as a woman for stage, often in a house coat, would today be thought of as under the trans umbrella based on never wearing women's clothing off stage.
Oh.
No, Medea. This is vaudeville. This should be your area right now. Vaudeville. No. Mom's Mabley is correct. Oh, wait a minute. You've already.
That was Tory.
Oh, that was yours. All right, Mom's Mabley is correct. Mom's Mabley, look her up. She was an incredible comedian who today we would consider Mom's Mabley was trans. His drag was the Mom's Mabley character. All right. So thank y'all. We have a few more giveaways once the video's over with. I hope you enjoy the video. All the guys who are part of the video, please stand up so we can recognize you. All the guys who are part of the video. So I hope you enjoyed. It's about 30 minutes or so please sit tight. And afterwards we're going to have a chance to talk with the guys and also just explore some ideas with you. We are streaming live. Hi, people who are streaming live. Hi! We are streaming live on YouTube and on Facebook. So once the video is over with, that's right, get them up. Once the video is over with, then we're going to have a chance to have an in-depth conversation just based upon what we talked about in the video. Is that all right? All right, so without much further ado, I introduce to you the conversation. Turn to your neighbor and say, let's have the conversation. Hi, I'm Eric Wilson, and welcome to the conversation. There are times in life when you just have to have the conversation. The conversation about sex, sexuality, gender expression, and how we stay healthy through it all. Listen, the conversation is sometimes awkward.
I have no idea. Don't know how to tell.
Sometimes confusing, but it's always real and it's always necessary if we're going to make healthy changes. So let's stop HIV by having the conversation. Today we're having a conversation about trans men and the sexual health needs of trans men. So, let's start with this. How about if I go around and everyone give me your name, where you're from, and when did you start transitioning? And let's start from my left.
Hey there, thanks for having me. My name is Jamil Ashley Ware. I'm from Detroit, Michigan, and I started my transition about 6 years ago after I finished my undergraduate career.
My name is Manesh Chapman. I actually grew up here in Georgia, in Loganville. I started my transition November 2016.
I'm Jamil Jacobu. I'm from Miami, Florida. I moved to Macon, Georgia 6 years ago, and 6 months I moved to Atlanta, Georgia. I started naturally transitioning in 2014 and medically transitioning in 2016. Hello, I'm Mir Davitry. Basically, I was born in Atlanta, not really, but I'm from Atlanta. And then, medically speaking, I started about 2013, I think that's a good number.
I'm West Song. I graduated from Salisbury, Maryland, from Tallahassee, Florida. Medically transitioning and relatively new to it as far as identity and the association of identity and transitioning as this many years ago.
Great. Hello, I'm Jerome Young from Brooklyn, New York. I am the member leader of Transforming, which is a transnational-led organization in which I joined about 9 years ago and started my transition.
Cool. So when I think about myself, and I can certainly understand what it means for me to be Black, what it means for me to be tall, what it means for me to be a man even. Royce, what does it mean for you to be a trans man?
Let's see. To be a trans man, for me, it's probably, for me, trans man because of how long I've been self-aware, it's more so than a matter of recognition. So my earliest memories have only been male believers. There hasn't been anything that I've moved from and into, which is more so evolution. So as far as trans man, for me, I usually use trans man to make it as simple for someone to understand as possible. But as far as my everyday identity is simply man or male.
Does anybody else have a sense of what it means to be a trans man?
Yes, because I'm kind of backing what he was just saying in terms of, the transition is the part of the journey, kind of like, how it's part of the journey from boy to man. It's part of the journey to being a trans man from female to male. It's female to male, not necessarily man, you know what I mean? As a man, you stand in your manhood as a man. So it's kind of hard to say, about what it means to be a trans man, aside from that's just the best way to describe it.
That's what you describe it? Is there a difference for you between trans man or male? Are they just interchangeable terms?
They're interchangeable. When I look at myself, I just see a man. But when I have to explain to someone my identity, then I use the word trans man. And really, I only actually prefer to use the word trans man when it has something to do with intimacy, because it's important for my partner to know what they're getting into. I've always seen myself as a man. I think many trans men feel that way. To be identified as a trans man simply means that the world now recognizes you as you see yourself.
So, in terms of sexuality, because there's gender expression and then there's sexuality, how would you explain your sexuality if someone were to ask? And how does your sexuality play into your sexual health needs?
Okay. Gender identity and sexuality are two different arenas. How I identify myself has nothing to do with who I'm attracted to and furthermore what I sleep with. And the second part of your question, how does my sexuality play into my sexual health needs, is we have the same risk factors. We're all human beings having sex and interacting with each other, always having the risk of exposing ourselves to different diseases, just as any other man.
Jamel Jack.
Well, my sexuality is pansexual. I think more on the person's personality and the emotional connection than the appearance. I am married 2 years with a trans woman, and that was after I started transitioning, I met her.
What do you want to tell young trans men who are struggling with issues of transition and visibility?
I would tell young trans men that who you are is important to the world. And it's all right to be yourself. And everyone may not understand the journey, but it's yours to live, so live it.
Manesh, there are a lot of assumptions and stereotypes as it relates to dating trans men. How do these assumptions or stereotypes really hinder or help the development of healthy relationships that you may have?
A lot of people, first let me say that everyone likes what they like. No one should be judged by what it is that they desire. That's their own business. There are trans men who enjoy being with trans women, and that is wonderful. But a lot of people assume that that's everyone. And sometimes that kind of creates a problem within that it's not purposely done. It's just from lack of understanding. So as far as relationships go, I think that if we get an understanding of what it is that we want from one another or don't want from one another, then I feel like it would be a lot more comfortable amongst everyone.
Can I build on that? Some of the stigmas and stereotypes dating trans men are that we're heterosexual, that we only deal with cisgender women. And then for those more fluent with their sexuality, that only trans guys only get penetrated. So it's like people just assume, people take their own expectations of what we are and just kind of create their own picture of us. It can really go either way.
So, do you feel that trans men get the same level of attention as trans women when it comes to their sexual health needs?
No, I don't.
Why is that?
And I have been actually on that journey to find the answer to that. And it's honestly, I don't have a solid answer. But I can say that we all notice that we don't get as much help. Whether it be lesbians notice it, whether it be trans women notice it. If you notice that we're not getting what it is that we need, help us so that we can get what it is that we need.
Do you feel that trans men get the same level of attention?
Trans men definitely don't get the same attention as trans women, but I believe most of that has to do with visibility. Most trans women can be identified, and trans men cannot be identified. We are fortunate to be able to live stealth lives where we don't go detected. And I think because of not being detected and a lot of times our own unwillingness to show up and have the conversation for ourselves, it leaves us left out of the conversation.
What is stealth for you? And then how does someone living stealth impact their ability to get or go after health services?
So someone stealth is someone who blends into society without disclosing the fact that they're trans. Just plain living their life as a perceived cisgender person. That could impact and affect the way you get medical services, if you even get services, because in order to get the type of services you need, at some point you need to disclose. And if that is a issue for you, that may be one of the things that keep you from going. If you are stealth, you may not be willing to use the language that you need to help someone understand the services that you need to help you.
What do you think is the temptation to live stealth, and is there judgment for trans men who decide to live stealth and not necessarily identify as trans men?
I believe that with society, especially with trans men against trans men, those who are visible does judge on those who are self. But you can be self for many reasons. Maybe the state that you live in, is a higher risk for trans men to get murdered, killed, or abused, or whatever the case may be in that state. And some people choose to go self because of that reason. I believe that if you're going self, you have a reason behind it. I don't judge on it, but there is in the community they do judge on it.
Jamel, you lead an organization for trans men by trans men. What's the temptation for you to live stealth?
Stealth, a lot of times, is being. It's not necessarily identifying. And so some people could say, I'm stealth, just because I don't announce it everywhere, but if the conversation came up, I would, and I do, as a teachable moment. So I use my selfness to get people in and to see us as regular people, and to interact with us and to respect me, to develop a good rapport. And then once I disclose myself, now they have something positive to associate to transgender.
What do you want to tell young trans men who are struggling with issues of transition and disability?
I want to tell young trans men that one, you aren't a mistake. You are not a mistake. There is nothing wrong about you being intentionally created. There's nothing wrong with your design. Who you are is perfectly assigned and is intentionally assigned. The next thing that I would tell young trans men is to surround yourself with people who celebrate you and take on that same energy, because there is such a process. Life in itself is a journey, but I can definitely say that sometimes the people that you feel are the closest and who will rally for you and advocate for you aren't always those people when it's time to actually become who you are. Make sure you're aware of your circle and that you're in a place that's going to actually allow you to flourish
in fostering your growth?
On what level do trans men want to live stealth sometimes play into the stigmas and the objectifications that you all said is just something that is really problematic?
I personally just don't think, I think there's two separate things.
Mm-hmm.
Especially for me personally, I'm not intentionally not living my truth. This is my truth. Okay, so should I be less passable in order to have to be objectified? So it's like, that doesn't give people the ground to question me, to hound me, to cross boundaries. That's really the issue, is when the boundaries are.
Let me just better define, because I understand how you define stealth. And so when I think of stealth, I usually tend to think of guys who just don't want to acknowledge that they're trans. I'm a man, that's it. I'm not gonna take the trans label, I'm not gonna carry the trans flag. I'm a man, that's it. I'm living my life. But can that inadvertently lead to stigma? I mean, think about when it came to gay issues. It used to be the same thing would happen in the 70s and 80s with gay men. But then people started coming out more, and the more men came out, the less gay men got objectified. So how do you think saying, listen, I'm just gonna identify as a man, that's it, I'm living my life, no trans stuff, how does that inadvertently play into stigma down the road, or potentially? Do you think it does?
I mean, I guess being stealth could play into the stigma, but I want to go back to something D. Jamel said. What happened to relationship building? I don't think that many people have problems answering questions with people that they know or they have relationships with. You cannot just meet someone and then expect them to expose their lives. I think that it's dehumanizing. So whether or not someone is stealth or they're out, there needs to be this level of respect for people as human beings. I have some questions for you because you've asked us many questions, but how well do I really know you? So even then, my questions will be more respectful. I'm going to ask you questions about your body parts or fetishize you because that does happen. It happens a lot. Oh, you're a trans man? Oh, what do you got down there? Are you posted pre-op? Why am I talking about my genitalia? I just met you 30 seconds ago.
I have another one for what you're saying. I feel like if that person is exhibiting toxic masculinity, then I feel like that's the only way that stealth would really contribute back to it being negative. You know?
What does toxic masculinity mean to you?
It's someone that feels like he is not a man if he does not exemplify these traits of what society has said a man is.
A stereotype. I used to always hear this when I would go out, many years ago, that if we go to a club and it was a bunch of gay guys, we're cool, but the moment that real, hard lesbians show up, that a fight is about to happen. That's a stereotype that they fight on because they're trying to project that's what men do when they fight all the time. And so is that a real thing? And do trans men sometimes fall into that trap of, and how much of that is testosterone?
Oh man. So masculine lesbians and trans men fall into that stereotype because society portrays masculinity a certain way.
Like, we do have, on paper, hypersexuality, which I know I did. And, it's one of those things where you understand more what parts are biologically motivated versus what parts are somebody being taught something. That's in my personal experience.
What about self, being accountable for self?
Yes. What do you want to tell young trans men who are struggling with issues of transition and visibility?
I would tell young trans men that transition involves more than just your outer shell.
So, Manesh, what role would you say stigma has played in you're seeking HIV testing or any other type of health treatment?
None. Because my health is important to me. If I don't care about myself, nobody else will. I don't care if the doctor doesn't agree with me in my life choices. You have one job to do, and I need you to do that job. Test me for AIDS, test me for HIV, test me for STDs, STIs, test me for everything to make sure that I'm good. So I don't think that anyone should allow what other people think of them to come in between their health. Like, this is life or death. So I don't think that a stigma should play any part in it.
Jamel Jack, have you ever had to stop and pause before deciding to go to receive any kind of medical care, just because you just didn't feel like dealing with all the issues that the medical establishment might give you as a trans man?
I have, and at the beginning of my transition, when I had very high dysphoria, and I hope from going to the doctor not to get misgendered because of the ID still on the female or something like that. Because going in and, being questioned about my gender identity is always, they kind of push you to the side most of the time, and then when I actually was able to get my gender changed, is the insurance didn't want to cover certain tests that I needed to get because of the body parts I had. So it took me to change my insurance to actually get the care that I needed.
Right. So you were denied certain tests and certain diagnostics just because of body part issues?
Yeah.
Interesting. What do you think are some challenges that trans men or yourself may have in relates to seeking medical care?
So I actually really didn't think much about medical care until I moved to Atlanta. I recently moved from Madison, Wisconsin, which is a very liberal, much smaller town. So I knew exactly where to go. I knew who was trans friendly, who was not. And it just was easy that way. But actually recently, this week, I've been having some issues that I really should probably go to the doctor about. But I'm frankly terrified because I've heard many people have terror stories about doctors. Now I've asked a few trans men, what are the best places for me to go? But it goes back to this ideal of body dysphoria. I am a man, and that's what all of my gender markers say, but I still have some female parts. And those parts still need yearly maintenance. But if a doctor does not understand how to ask a trans patient, how do you define your body, and then they prescribe the language that they want to use, it becomes very uncomfortable.
So how do you navigate seeking gender-specific care? Or just sitting in a waiting room with a bunch of cisgender women, and you're there to see the same doctor they're there to see. How do you navigate the weird looks or that you may get? Do you get weird looks?
I'm assuming you're talking about gynecology.
Yeah.
Well, I've only had the experience in the beginning of my transition. Right now, my primary care is my primary care.
Okay.
So I'm in the waiting room with everybody.
So you don't go to specialty care?
No.
Okay.
But I don't do it. I just walk through the world proudly. I've really learned that the more nervous you are, the more timid you are, the more people kind of prey on that. When you present yourself confidently and with conviction, people kind of just respect you. So like when I'm at a doctor and they're confused about my gender mark says M, but when they ask me questions, I'm kind of initiating my own concerns. I'm just direct about it. I don't get around the bush. All right, I'm trans. Yes, I need this test. This is what it is. Do what you have to do from now on. Just be more direct.
Has anyone experienced a problem or a challenge as it relates to gynecological care or just intimidation around?
I have once. So on prior service, I was in the military for 10 years, and I do get my help from the VA. The VA has been wonderful. I will definitely say that they have been wonderful throughout my entire transition. I can't say that I've had any problems as far as labels and things as that goes. But I will say that before I knew exactly who I am, I still had my beard, I still had a little bit of muscle, but I still needed my parts to be checked. So I had to go to the gynecologist area, and it was filled with only women. And a male doctor came out and he said to me, he said, would you like to move? And I said, no, I'm fine where I'm sitting. And he says, well, I was just, asking because I'm thinking because he's being, courteous. I respect that, thank you. But his following statement was, well, basically with the way that I look, I'm sitting here with all of these women, how will they feel about that? And I was just like, I didn't really respond. I just kind of looked at him because that was, that was kind of the first time that ever happened to me. But in my mind, I just thought, I'm at the doctor. I'm here to get care. I'm here to get help. I don't care what you people think. I don't care how y'all feel about how I look. I'm not coming into your space. I'm not putting any kind of stress on you. Don't worry about me. I won't worry about you. So from that point, I was like, I'm no longer ever going to feel uncomfortable about going to the doctor again, because this is for me. It's not for anybody else to be comfortable in my space.
What do you want to tell young trans men who are struggling with issues of transition and visibility?
I would like to tell young trans men struggling with visibility and the transition to be you unapologetically. Being trans, there is no one way to be it, and that you have the luxury to define what that looks like, and that even surgeries and hormones are just an addition to affirm who you are. Being trans simply just means you do not identify with how you were born or assigned at birth. And like my brother said, surround yourself with a support system and do your research.
What advice would you give to other trans men regarding just navigating social and medical health needs?
I mean, getting together with other trans men that actually getting the care and reaching out to them and seeing what resources they have, so that you can follow and see what trans-friendly doctors there are out there to get the help is what I suggest, being in contact with other trans men.
What advice would you give trans men when it comes to navigating just social and medical needs?
Awesome. Basically, to remember that all of us are starting from different places, and because this is a genetic situation that we're going through, we all have different results. So even if we're not gonna look exactly the same, we're not gonna have the same growth rate, we're not gonna have the same anything. But generally speaking, we're gonna have general and same experiences, so just remember that.
So, of course, there is, right now, trans issues are big news and really are dominating headlines. And oftentimes, people speaking on behalf of trans communities are in places of privilege that sometimes can cause them to consider things in a certain way. What do you think are some key issues that trans leaders need to really pay attention to when it comes to sexual health needs, particularly in trans men?
Oh, wow. Specifically, I would say actually having the conversations and creating an actual space, especially if you have a large platform, creating the space, a safe space to actually bring up the topics, because oftentimes the topics themselves are not surfaced at all. They may be whispered about, there's something that, is talked about in the shadows, but to actually bring it to the surface as a necessity, oftentimes there's a disconnect. And I think it's important to acknowledge, one, our health needs, and two, the importance of assessing our health. And then it's true, because it is such a popular topic right now, oftentimes there's more focus put on the sensationalism as opposed to actual humanism. There's a lot of objectifying. We're more novelties oftentimes than an actual human experience. So setting aside the novelty aspect and actually acknowledging us as humans, we can open up so many doors of conversation that take place.
You know, there's also the old sense of objectification,
Very much so.
and not being seen as fully developed as individuals and everything else. Anyone else want to talk to what it means to feel objectified?
That's all they see. Sometimes all they see is, wow, you're trans, wow, you're attractive. And that's all great and I'm flattered, thank you. But I would love to have further conversations about either the topic at hand or me, my life as a person. I really don't like me being trans being the center of attention every single time. You know what I'm saying?
I think that's why most, once someone knows that you're trans, that's all they want to talk about. I lived there for about 3.5 years. I ran a business back in Madison, Wisconsin, and I did that once I started casting because I did not want the topic of conversation to be about my gender. I wanted it to be about my company. I'm here to talk business with you, not about gender identity or sexuality. And it happens, he's right, like it happens all too often where you can be having a conversation about something completely different, and then they find out you're trans, and that's all they want to fixate on.
Have you ever been in a situation where you really do feel kind of tokenized, or you have to really, you're not put on the spot, since you're the one trans person in the room, you have to speak for the entire trans community?
Well, I've been going through the process of trying to get a hysterectomy, right? So going to the doctor, there was a whole bunch of women, of course, and I get there, and I'm the only man there. And the lady, she takes me to the back to a different waiting room. So when I get inside, instead of her focusing, there was more doctors and nurses there, focusing on my health, her question was just about trans men and things about that. Questions that shouldn't even have to come up. And it took the focus off my health to my gender identity.
So you're there to get served, and you end up having to give a cultural competence lecture and training to your healthcare provider.
Exactly.
Did they pay you?
So,
I'm just saying, normally
so it's
trainers
like
get paid.
all these questions about, why did I transition if I got married to a trans woman? Would that still be considered straight? And I'm like, either way, I am a straight man, so it's still, either way, I'm still straight. And I'm told her gender identity and sexual orientation is two different things. But her focus was, why did I transition if I was still dating an opposite sex?
Royce, would you say that most trans men would identify as being straight?
I definitely wouldn't say most, because that would be generalizing a large amount of people. I would definitely say there are variations in the spectrum, and it can't be generalized. So it's even more imperative to have conversations like this where we are discussing sexual health needs as well as gender identity, because not everyone has the same attraction, definitely not the same relationships and interactions. So we all have individual needs and individual desires.
What do you want to tell young trans men who are struggling with issues of transition and visibility?
I would tell you, young trans man, to be yourself, do your research, live your life the way you choose to live, and do not compare your transition to the next man, because each journey is different.
How much information do you think trans men have about PrEP?
As far PrEP as far as what?
Oh, there we go.
I think there are very little information available for trans guys around PrEP. Therefore, not many trans guys know about PrEP. And I think that's a very important conversation, which goes back to sexuality and how fluid it can be, because those same risk factors are the same. And for whatever reason, trans men tend to get grouped still into sexual health with females and think that we have the same risk factors. But what about the trans guys that date gay men, have gay relationships? They are in an MSM relationship, therefore they have the same risk factors as any other cisgender guy. And so PrEP is a conversation that needs to be more privy, because that can save lives. There are trans guys that I know that are positive, but I'm sure there are plenty of trans guys that don't know. So that impacts a lot of people.
So that's interesting, because once again, PrEP is pre-exposure prophylaxis. It is the taking of HIV medication, one pill once a day. Right now, the regimen is one pill once a day. If you take PrEP, you're pretty much safe from becoming HIV infected through sex, no matter who you have sex with. PrEP is a game changer as it relates to HIV prevention, and people at risk for HIV should think about being on PrEP at the very least. Many of them should be on PrEP. And if we got people on PrEP, if we got enough people on PrEP, we actually can end the HIV prevention, the HIV epidemic throughout the country. So PrEP is a game changer as it comes to HIV prevention. And having heard all of that about what PrEP is, what do you think are some of the challenges of trans men getting on PrEP, especially trans men who date cisgender men, or trans men who date trans women? Those are trans men who should at least have knowledge about PrEP or think about being on PrEP. What do you think, having heard what I just said about PrEP, what would hinder trans men from getting on PrEP?
I mean, the PrEP is something that a lot of trans men don't know about, and getting the word more out there and involving more trans men to the knowledge of PrEP. Like, I got to know about PrEP when I was working for an HIV and AIDS center. I didn't know about PrEP prior to that. And I got to know what was PrEP and how you get to know and study about taking it. Prior to that, I had no knowledge of it. And there's a lot of trans men out there that have no idea they can get on. So I think that it needs to be more visible, and more centers, doctors and stuff should be offering to trans men when they go into their clinics and doctor sessions.
Can I go up there?
Yeah, go ahead.
In order to talk about PrEP, I think one, you have to now have a conversation about your sexual activities. And for a lot of guys, just their identity alone is a tough conversation. So now I have to tell you who I have sex with and how I have sex and what parts I use. So I think having a conversation with our community, ourselves, and letting each other know, like, it's okay to be yourself, it's okay to like what you like, and us kind of affirming each other, it might need to start there, because the shame is what's going to stop guys from being PrEP.
What do you want to tell young trans men who are struggling with issues of transition and disability?
I want to tell the young trans men that when you question, or you don't understand, or you don't know what it is or who it is that you are, that brings about stress and anger, frustration, depression, and the only thing that you're trying to do is become happy. So you have to take those first steps to finding your happiness. And you have to, if you're worried about what other people are going to think of you, maybe those people aren't supposed to be with you throughout your journey.
There you have it. We have had the conversation about trans men. Now it's your turn. Have the conversation. And together, let's stop HIV in Atlanta.